We just hit 3,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I wanted to thank you guys and do a video that is a bit different. Rather than focusing so much on League and how to get better at League, I thought I'd flip it around and talk about at this milestone how what I've learned from League has helped me with life and how it can help you with life. And I think why, for some people, League can be worth playing. And a lot of it comes down to, well, I'm going to redo this anyways, but I'm going to yap for a little bit to figure out what I want to say. The, League is an interesting game because it teaches you a certain level of how to improve at something that is hard to find in other things that you do, because it gives you such direct feedback and it's such an obviously, you know, there's such an obvious rating system for you to compare yourself to how other people are doing. And it shows you a framework of how you can get better at things. And what's really cool in life, I think, about learning how to get better at things is that it doesn't really matter what you want to do or what you're doing. Those skills are always going to be transferable, like, you know, learning a champion or something that is the best champion to learn on because it's easy, it's clear, and it teaches you about the rest of the game and the skills are transferable. One of the reasons why League is such an enticing game and so successful as a competitive game is because it teaches you those skills in a way that I think is super transferable to life. So even if you pick up League and play it for a couple of years and then quit, but during that time you went from being a player who in your first few games was running into the turret and dying over and over again, you're now a player who has managed to get to gold or whatever. Even for the maybe a more casual player or your average player, the takeaways that you can get from a game like League are kind of unique and provocative, because you can take those things that you learned about not just how to get better at League, but how to get better and improve at anything that you put your mind to, and transfer that to other things that you're doing in your life. And so for me, obviously, there's a lot of things that I've been doing over the years. And it wasn't easy for me always in school because I wasn't really interested in it. My heart wasn't in it. And, so as a result, I wasn't doing well and paying attention. And when I went back to school for college, League really gave me a fresh outlook on going to school, because I was there because I wanted to be there and because that was my goal. And what's amazing about going and doing things in real life as opposed to League is that, and maybe this will surprise a lot of people who haven't necessarily made that transition yet, but a lot of things in real life, especially school, are easier than getting better at League. Because, to get to the top of League, to hit Challenger and things like that, is a really difficult, time consuming thing, because you're competing against a bunch of other people and you simply can't do it unless you're improving faster than hundreds of thousands of other people. And but even if, again, you don't make it all the way to Challenger, to Masters, or to Diamond, even if you just start with something and are able to improve to being an average player or better than average player from nothing, especially in a, depending on how long it takes you and things like that, that's kind of an incredible accomplishment. And you can use those skills, even if you don't pour as many hours as I did into League. You can use what you learned from your first 1,000 hours in League, and how you improved over that time, to apply it to other things. And you start to apply it to other things that are actually easier, like school, for example, than League, in my opinion. And or something that maybe you're more naturally inclined to be good at. So for some people, maybe school is actually really hard and they find League easier than school. But maybe, it's something else for them. But when you put your mind to something that isn't gate kept by having to be better than so many other people in the way that League is as a competitive game to get to the top. When you find that, okay, this thing that I'm trying to do, I want this job or this position, or I want to do this in school, and it isn't limited to a certain number of people who can do that, or the sky's the limit to what you can do. The thing is that you go and you put your mind to something that anyone can be successful at, and it becomes a lot easier. Like getting to Challenger and League is a bit like trying to become like a rock star or something like that. It's just not going to happen for most people. But what's cool about League is that if you learn a lot from playing the game and how to improve, and basically taking personal responsibility for your mistakes, even if you're not always doing that, right? At some level you do, and you get better and you get better and you get better. You've learned how to dedicate your time to something and improve at something. And so then you go and you transfer that to something that's easier to be successful at for more people. And like whether that's school or in the business world or whatever, and a whole world can open up to you, because there's a lot of things where, unlike League or being a rock star, it's not really limited to a select few number of people who can be the best at it. You can be really good at what you do, and there might be 10,000 people that are that good. Or you might be competing in a space in real life where there aren't millions of people also competing with you, because people have to choose and specialize what they're going into or what field or whatever. And so all of a sudden you're competing with 10,000 people or 100,000 people instead of like millions. And that is going to make your life a lot easier, because beating out that number of people versus the number of people that you're dealing with in a game like League is actually easier. So it's kind of interesting. If you can master improving at League, even in a small way, even over a shorter time period than I did, it will teach you a lot about how to improve at anything that you put your mind to, and life. And so a lot of that starts with, we're talking about a really grand scheme here. And that's funny because the last video we did was called, start of a thing I want to do called The Devil's in the Details, and focusing on a lot of little details in League. I mean, that's where I'm at in my League journey, right? Is really honing in on asking questions that other players, good players have probably asked, but has one player asked them all or accumulated all of, perfecting every little thing about the game? There's so many things. You have to really take a step back when it comes to League when you're at a higher level and think, I've got to now not just be good at doing things overall, but I need to focus on every little thing. I need to focus on how I'm auto-attacking. I need to focus on how I'm using my abilities, where my mouse is, where my camera is, what all of the champions do. And I need to take a step back and say, yes, I'm really good at the game, but have I actually taken the time to sit down and think for an hour or two, this is how you auto-attack as well as you possibly can? And am I coming anywhere close to achieving that in the way that I actually play? This is how I'd like to cast my abilities in a way that would be most likely to be successful. How often am I actually achieving that, right? So, and do that on every little thing: items, runes, auto-attacking abilities, mouse placement, all this stuff. There's so much room for improvement, even for a player like me who's hit Challenger. And so, I'm starting to do that more now, and I'm actually accelerating, hopefully, the rate at which I'm improving with League. But to bring it back to what we're talking about now, I think that what you have to start with is from a bigger picture, rather than focusing on the specific details, because the specific details will be different depending on what it is specifically that you're trying to do, since it could be anything. What League really teaches you is that whether you accept it or not, when you do things a certain way, they're going to have an impact on the world and the outcome that you're seeing. And there are two types of people. There are people who are going to choose to accept responsibility for the way that they've done things and clearly accept reality and see the impact of what's happened, analyze it, and figure out how to approach the situation maybe better next time, or whether the situation was approached the correct way, but there was a chance that things went wrong anyways or whatever. But there's people who accept responsibility and then accept reality and then try to fix the way that they're approaching things to be better and better and better next time. And then there's people who will blame everything that's going on other people or circumstances, or it wasn't the decision that I made or the process that I had or me. It's always something else. And those people will have a hard time ever improving, let alone improving at a rate that's fast enough to get somewhere that they want to get to in any endeavor. And so what I learned from League, actually, and being able to be a good League player, helped me tremendously with YouTube as an example. I mean, this is a really easy one that we could go into as an example, right? When I first started making YouTube videos, I don't remember how long ago. It was probably a little bit more than a year ago, but very infrequently then and more frequently now. And when I first started making the videos, I had no idea how to make thumbnails, no idea how to edit videos, and to a certain extent, I still don't, right? But, you can tell there are improvements that I've made along the way to everything that I'm doing when I'm making YouTube videos. And obviously, I've only made, it says here, I have like 177 videos up. And so I would need a lot more reps to continue to get even better. But I've changed everything, not everything. There's some stylistic things that I've kept the same. But there are things that I've gotten better and better and better at. When I first started making YouTube videos, my audio was so low that it was audio for ants. There's no better way to describe it. For whatever reason, I like to have the volume way up high, maxed out on my computer. And then in each game or application, I would lower the volume or whatever. But this is just stupid. And what you have to understand when you're on the internet and you're sharing something with a lot of people is that you have to account for the fact that there are going to be people who have their volume really low, and there are going to be people who have their volume really loud, like I did. And so that means that you want to be in the middle so that your audio sounds the best to the most number of people. So that meant for me, even when I'm playing League, not recording a video, doing things on my own, my volume level on my computer changed so that I had a normal 50 out of 100 average volume level so that my mic was adjusted to account for that. I've messed with pop filters and this distance that my mic needs to be away from my mouth, and, making sure that fans and air conditioners and heaters and any other stuff in the background that could make any noise is off. I'd like to work on the echo a little bit more, would be the next one. I've noticed that when I keep the door open to the office, it, we get a little bit of a better, less echoey sound, but the echo can be okay too. So that's just like on the audio level and stuff like that. And then stylistically, the videos have stayed the same. I mean, it's not like, again, we're only 177 videos in. It's not like I'm editing a ton of gameplay footage together. But part of that is because there's a trade-off to doing that, right? I have only so much time to make a YouTube video, and so my improvement needs to not just come from spending 3 hours per video instead of 1. It has to be 1 hour per video. So if I spend 30 minutes editing, I can only spend 30 minutes yapping. And of course, I think I've built a niche that a lot of you guys enjoy around just sharing my knowledge about the game and talking. And I don't have to do so much editing and searching for for the perfect clip to showcase what I'm talking about, because it's a group of people who, and we could maybe expand it by doing both, but it's a group of people who probably learn more from listening or enjoy more listening to a verbal explanation rather than seeing the visual example. So sometimes we can do without it. There are certain topics, obviously, that would benefit from it more than others. But there's a lot of knowledge that I can share this way. And so stylistically, the yapping never ceased. But I've experimented with different lengths of videos, completely different style of videos. I made a video on just one that we tried about my solo queue journey, just recapping my games and sort of stuff like that, like GBA used to do back in the day. I've obviously done a lot of videos about getting better at League. Some of them are more general, some of them are more focused on specific topics. We've talked a lot about ranked and Riot and what I think Riot could do to improve the game and stuff like that. So we've experimented with all kinds of different topics. And I know what works better and what doesn't, what gets more views and what doesn't. I don't necessarily always choose to make the video that I think I have on my ideas list that will just get the most views, because I have a feeling I'll get to it eventually. So I'd rather do things that are maybe more time sensitive or relevant, or I'm more interested in yapping about at the moment. And of course, I wanted to say too that I've learned a lot actually from making these videos from you guys. There's so many topics that I went in thinking, okay, I'm going to do a really good job of trying to explain this to people. And I understand the concept, but there's a lot of details that I'm missing, or in some cases, I'm just straight up wrong. And the nice thing about the internet is, of course, that people will come and correct you. But that's a really good thing. And it's one of the reasons why probably people who've watched a lot of my videos know that there are probably videos that I basically remade that are on a similar topic. And a lot of the reason for that is because I learned things and people mentioned things that were really important. And I just felt like I needed to redo it or make a newer, updated version that included the new things that I've learned about the topic. And so every single time I make a video about League, there's something that either I thought about but didn't say, or, usually somebody else comments something good and I'm like, dang, I wish I would have known that or included that in the video. So I've learned a ton about the game from making these videos for you guys, through you guys interacting and commenting on the videos. I read most every comment. I think I've read probably all of them, to be honest, which is a lot of them. But I read, all of the comments on the videos since the beginning. And obviously, teaching something to other people does help you to get a better idea and a better concept on what you're teaching. But not just that, just straight up information that I was wrong about or that other people provided to me has been super helpful for me as a player. Somebody had commented one time, I was looking through and kind of looking at stuff that's happened with the channel and stuff to talk about for this one. And somebody had said at one point that they were a little bit surprised at how fast I had gone from Grandmaster to Challenger. And I looked, and technically it was longer than this because I had hit Grandmaster for the first time earlier than this. But I actually got Challenger, the video that I made on ending Grandmaster for the first time was 1 month apart from the video that I made about getting Challenger for the first time. And I honestly don't think I would have improved that much over such a short period of time if it wasn't for learning things about the game from you guys. And so one of the things I wanted to do too is talk about, and I'm not going to remember them all because a lot of them have been absorbed, but I know some specifics. So I do want to talk about some specific things that you guys have taught me about the game that I think is really important. A lot of it started with, I wanted to make a really comprehensive big video about kind of everything that there is to know about League. And I've tried to record this video multiple times. I probably posted multiple versions of it, but I always start with talking about, the basic stats that make up the game, and ability haste and AD and attack speed and all this stuff. And there's so many things that I learned from talking about those things that I think people overlook today. I had a really flawed view on the way that armor and resistances worked in League, because I was very familiar with the armor and magic resist chart that show that the percentage armor and magic resist, the percentage reduction that you get. And because that percentage gets, looks like it has diminishing returns, you'll get an extra 10 armor and you'll jump from 60% to 67%, when the previous 10 armor you jumped from, a much bigger percentage. And so it looked to me like when you're buying more armor and magic resist or whatever, that it's, you're facing diminishing returns. But then people explained to me all this math about how, I think the easiest way to put it is that if you got to 100%, physical damage reduction, you wouldn't take any physical damage. So it's not like you can go from 0 armor to 100 armor and go from 0 to 50% and then go from 100 armor to 200 armor and go to 100%. Otherwise, at 200 armor, you would just stop taking any physical damage, or at 200 magic resist, you just stop taking any physical damage or any magic damage. So what has to happen is you start to approach 100%, but slower and slower and slower, so that you can never actually get there. But it doesn't mean that each additional point of armor or each additional point of magic resist is actually any weaker than the last. So, for example, when you go from 0 armor to 100, you go from 0% physical damage reduction to 50%. And then when you go from 100 armor to 200 armor, you go from 50% to 67%. But what's happening to your effective HP is that, let's say you have 1,000 HP with your 100 or 200 armor. Well, at 1,000 HP and 50% damage reduction, what does 50% damage reduction means? It's 1/2. It means that for every 2 damage that they deal to you, you only take 1. You only take 1/2 of the damage that they're dealing to you. So your effective HP is the inverse of that. It's double, what you take. So your effective HP is 2,000 if you have 50% damage reduction. Now, when you move to 2/3 to 67% physical damage reduction at 200 armor, it sounds like, well, why would I buy from 100 armor to 200? That sounds like a lot worse, because I'm only getting 17% physical damage reduction, whereas before, for the same cost, for the same 100 armor, I got 50%. But what happens to your effective HP is that if you're reducing 2/3 of the damage that they're dealing to you, that means they have to deal 3 times as much damage. For every 3 damage that they deal, only 1 damage gets through to you. So if you have 1,000 HP, they need to deal 3,000 damage. So actually, your first 100 armor that you bought, 0 to 100, is increasing your effective HP from 1,000 to 2,000. And your second set of 100 armor is increasing your effective HP from 2,000 to 3,000. They're doing the exact same thing for the exact same cost. So there is no diminishing returns for armor and magic resist. This was a big misunderstanding that I had, because when I was constructing builds, bad misunderstanding to have as a tank support player, when I was constructing builds, I was thinking that when I got to, 100, or just when the curve seemed to slow way down, at 100 or 150 armor, 150 magic resist, I was like, not much point in buying more armor. Maybe if I don't have enough magic resist, then I'll switch over to a magic resist item, or maybe it would be more important to focus on buying health. And that's just a completely flawed way to view the game. And so that, that's been really, really big. I didn't put nearly as much emphasis before, doing this on YouTube and thinking about all these concepts. I didn't put nearly as much emphasis on what component items I was building in what order. Extremely important. of course, I think we know this as players, and so maybe when I say this, it doesn't register quite as much. Of course, we know that if we're building a Triforce or something like that, that Sheen is like, for most champions, because they benefit heavily from an item like Sheen, that Sheen is going to be this core component that you're trying to buy. But I'm not even just talking about like a core component that is obviously better than the other ones because it has some sort of, mini active or passive that you get right away while you're building into the item, like a Lost Chapter or Sheen. I'm talking about, is it better to buy the Amp Tome or the Mana Crystal? Is it better to buy the Ruby Crystal or the Cloth Armor? Is it better to buy the Dagger or the Longsword? And these are questions that are really, really important and have a huge impact on your early game, which is the most important, and your laning phase, which is the most important stage of the game, because it's where you have the most control over. It's the most repeatable over and over again. And so it's really important. And so even now I'm, still fine tuning what components I should be buying in what order, and whether it's worth, now I'm getting into, is it worth waiting to buy, the correct one, or should I be pressing for, whatever I can get now, even if I know it's super suboptimal. For example, we know that Ruby Crystal is a lot better than Cloth Armor, especially because you have way more armor and magic resist than you need in the beginning for how much health you have. So you get like 6 times the effective HP from buying a Ruby Crystal early as you do from a Cloth Armor. So we know you want the Ruby Crystal, but if you can, let's say, you can afford the Cloth Armor, do you buy the Cloth Armor? Do you wait? This is a tough question. Usually you're going to buy it, right? That would be the common knowledge, is to just buy it because of the fact that getting power earlier in League, like we've talked about, is more important. But what happens if, you get stuck in a bad cycle of always buying the worst components, or, things like that. So we're still working on fine tuning it. There's still some numbers I'd like to run, but so many little things like that as well. I've realized and been quite humbled at how little I know about certain champions' abilities and stuff like that, because I used to preach, I still do, that when you first start learning League, that you really need to learn what all of the champions in the game do. And then you move on to what helped me when I was stuck the most, which was, instead of learning what the champions' abilities do, now you learn how the abilities interact with each other, so that you can not just use your abilities well, but use them like optimally, or like the best you can in a fight. But I don't think League is that linear either, or that simple to solve, to put it into, oh yeah, you just learn what all the characters do and then you just learn how their abilities interact with each other. There's obviously a lot more to it than that. But I've realized that obviously that also can't necessarily just be the best way to go about learning the game, because I've spent a lot of time not learning what all of the champions do and still not knowing what everything does specifically, and yet it hasn't prevented me from being a pretty good player. So maybe it is the case that focusing on some other things that are maybe more fundamental or more important is a faster, more efficient way to learn the game. Or maybe those things are core concepts that are more important, and I should fix them myself as a player. And while I might have strengths in other areas that have gotten me to where I am in ranked, I should, focus on the obvious shortcomings and take my own advice about how to get better at the game. But so there's lots of things like that I've learned. People explained to me that I was mistaken about Knight's Vow, which is another, very key item for a champion like Braum. So there was a time period, not very long, and I'm pretty good now about keeping up with what's going on with Braum's builds and stuff like that. But there was a period of time where I for sure, so it's a little bit confusing, because Knight's Vow was pretty terrible, and I was one of the only people who was accurately calling out that Knight's Vow was terrible. And then Knight's Vow was changed, it became good, and then I forgot about the change somehow. And somebody pointed out to me, that it had been changed, and I looked into it again, and then I realized, oh yeah, it's good. And then I started building it again. And, so even things like that, you sometimes just overlook or don't see. And so I've learned a lot. It's changed my build. It's changed the way that I've approached the game. I've had plenty of mistakes corrected. And I think that that's what's really important about this, is that it's like the 3,000 subscriber thing. Obviously, it's something that I worked on a lot, but it's that we're creating a community or a place where people who care about League at a deep level, and getting better at the game at a deep level, can come to share knowledge with each other, not just for me to share knowledge with you, although it is, of course, me being the player that I am, the level that I've gotten to, and the experience that I have. Of course, it is. I did start with the intention of sharing my knowledge of the game with you guys, but it's kind of cool that it's not just about that. It's also about you guys sharing knowledge with each other, sharing knowledge with me, and I think it's making us all better. So that's obviously a great byproduct of what we're doing. And yeah, so we hit 3,000. My next goal is going to be for 5,000. I always think, I've been doing 1,000 at a time, but I think that we should up the ante. Usually when you're, growing on YouTube and stuff like that, you would hope that you would grow faster and faster. Of course, you need to release videos in order to do that, which I'm very well aware of. And, so sometimes, I'm a busy person, believe it or not. So I've got a lot of stuff going on with life. And so there have been definitely periods of time where I've stopped uploading videos and stuff like that. And that's really slowed down my growth. And, that's just life. And that's just the way that I've been doing things. But, I really would like to upload a video a day. And we go through periods of that happening and then long periods of nothing. And that lack of consistency is obviously not good, and I'm aware of it. And hopefully we'll settle into a period of life here soon with the baby where that is more viable. But yeah, so the next goal will be 5,000. Hopefully we can start to get a little bit of exponential growth going instead of, continuing at a slow pace. Obviously, as more people watch each video, more new people will get exposed to it and that sort of thing. So that's always good. And I'll keep getting better at what I'm doing. It's been the audio and then getting better at the thumbnails. You wouldn't believe it, but maybe I should show you, put a thumbnail together for this video. But I edit all my thumbnails in Paint, if you can believe that. So all these nice new thumbnails that I've been doing, it's same thumbnail editor, Paint, MS Paint, that I've been using the entire time. There is one tool I wish Paint had, or I have to learn a whole nother editing software, although I haven't found one that's quite good for thumbnails. The one thing that I would like that Paint doesn't have is I'd like to be able to put, very simple feature really, it should just exist in the program, and I'm sure there's another program that has it, but I'd like to be able to put just these photos the way that it's going now. I'd like to be able to take the thumbnail and just put a black border around the red text. That's it, just a black outline, so that it contrasts a little bit more and it's a little bit more readable. But other than that, I like the format. Obviously, I've done lots of things with the thumbnails and stuff like that. I mean, we can go back and see. But I really like this background because it's so obviously League of Legends related that you can tell without me having to put League in the title, of the video, or without the video even necessarily specifically being about League. It's so easy to tell it's a League video. And then I think obviously maybe wasn't as important in the beginning anyways, but as people have watched my videos more and more, probably recognize my face. So if I stick my face on there, people will know that it's a video from me. Also, if my thumbnails are consistent like this, instead of, like 10 different colors and pictures and stuff like that, then, you'll know that it's me. The red text is a bit, eye-popping, catchy, big and readable. The font just keeps getting bigger, doesn't it? I use size 100 font, so that it's pretty readable. I've messed around with that a lot. We'll see. I did like to use to put the whole title in the text, but I think a lot of times, people can read the title. It's under the thumbnail anyways. So if you can put the most important concept in the text, and not actually the whole title, I think that can work well. So there's a lot of little things like this. I don't mean to make a tutorial on how to do YouTube or anything like that, but there's a lot of little details like this that I've been improving over time. And the point of that is that these kinds of ways of looking at things, this improvement mindset that starts to permeate all of your life, is something that I learned, since I was a teenager playing League. And it is healthy to an extent, right? So it's a good thing, I think, to be involved with competition and improvement in a way that teaches you those skills. But for some people at a certain point, like I said, maybe you got to gold or you got to platinum and you kind of got what you were going to get out of the game in terms of learning how to improve. And you can carry even just the skills that it took for you to go from bronze to gold or bronze to plat or whatever your journey was, even from iron to silver or whatever. You can sometimes take those skills that you learned, and it's enough that you're not going to get much more out of League for the time that you're putting into it, and go on to something else, because not everyone is going to put in the years that it takes and the thousands of hours that it takes to get Challenger. And if you're not willing to do that, and you're not committed to doing that, and you don't have a different reason why you're playing League, and you think you are legitimately going to get Challenger, and that's what you're trying to do, if you're not committed to putting in that crazy amount of time into it, then you should probably do something else. Because like I've said before, don't play League just because it's a habit. Play League because you're still either learning to improve, which was one of the great things that League teaches, that can allow me to go and do YouTube and focus on, learning all of these things and improving little things about the way that I'm doing things, or find, a niche, in the same way that I found a niche with League and playing support and Braum, and being one of the only Braum players that does content and stuff like that. It's like, I have my niche on YouTube, which is I yap for a long, long time. So that's just kind of how it goes. But I guess the point is that if you're only playing League because it's a habit, think about all the other things that you could be doing that you may even enjoy more, that you could be learning how to do and making improvement on, that would be worthwhile to do instead. And I think for a while, at least for me, I was playing League out of habit. And maybe to a certain extent I still am, but at least because I had learned, even without having gotten to Challenger and stuff like that, or even to Masters, improving all the way to Diamond had definitely taught me enough about improving. And I was already in college and doing well as a result of that, and improving and learning how to improve. But so if you've gotten what you can out of the game, it could be time to quit. But if you are still learning how to improve, or you just enjoy the game as a hobby, as a competitive experience, for another good reason, if you have a good reason to keep playing, then keep playing. But don't just do it out of habit. Because if you've already learned how to improve, one of the worst things that League can do to you is teach you how to improve, but you're so addicted to the game and it's such a habit for you, that you don't take what you've learned about how to improve and then go do something else. And so that's where I think a lot of people get stuck or get trapped. Because if you're even if you're still improving at League, maybe you'll make it to Challenger and become a YouTuber or a streamer on Twitch or something like that, or get onto one of these failing pro teams that are in financial ruin. But probably not going to happen anyways, even if you get really good. So there's that. It's very, very hard. It's very much like becoming a rock star or something like that. It's very, very difficult to get there. And I mean, I'm not there yet with YouTube at all. We're not even close. Um, I mean, it's probably my fault because I'm not posting enough videos or whatever. But I mean, look at this. We're racking in the views. We made $25. We're not bringing home the bacon with this one yet. But that's just because I haven't uploaded a lot in the last month because I've been gone. But you get the idea, right? Like, you could have 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. You could have 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it's not, not doing it. But that doesn't mean that that I'm not interested in doing it. I'm mostly interested in doing it because I enjoy talking about League. And I think it makes me a better player, helps me to improve and think about my own game. And I've always wanted to, first off, I'm a support player. I mean, what can I say? I've always enjoyed helping people and teaching people about what I know in any area that I know things about. And League is obviously one of the few areas where I know quite a bit about it, since I've spent so long practicing and getting better at it and learning it over the years. So, I'm happy to do that regardless. And we're going to keep doing it. I've still got many, many, many ideas. And hopefully the last video that we did, or maybe not the last one, but the one that we did that was just like me sitting for 2 hours and talking about advice that I had about ranked, was really, it had a really positive feedback, and it reminded me again of what I really should have already known, but that my most successful content is just me talking to you guys like it's old YouTube and sharing what I know. And that's why I enjoyed doing it in the first place. And that's probably why I'm having success, because we're right in that good spot between doing something that I enjoy and giving, people on YouTube what they want at the same time, in a way that a lot of League YouTubers aren't. There's plenty of League YouTubers doing the crazy, I've said this before, the crazy AP off meta build on this champion and that champion. And that is not this, right? This is just about like sharing our experience with the game and trying to get better, and sharing, little details that we've learned and bigger concepts that we've learned that have helped us get better and improve. And maybe you can, take that away from the game and construe it to mean something more about your life and the way that you approach life. I always look at everything, through goals, and it was actually really helpful to start seeing things that way when I was quite young, because I started seeing League as a goal, and setting goals with League. Probably lots of people have similar stories to this. I would write down on an index card, like a note. Well, index card is like flashcards from school. I haven't used an index card in like a million years. But I would take an index card and I would write down once every year at the start of the new season what my rank was and what rank I wanted to be by the end of the year. And, it just kept happening and happening and happening, that I'd always, write down, I want to be one rank higher, and then I'd go up one rank higher. Maybe I should have written 2 ranks higher, and then I would have gone up 2 ranks. But because of that, that's one of the things that League taught me, was that from an early age, I would set a goal when I was going to do something rather than just doing it. And if I wasn't interested in doing it and didn't have a goal for it, I wasn't going to waste my time on it. I was going to put as little effort and as little time into it as possible. And, at one point in high school, that was school. And that's okay too, because life is short. You have a limited amount of time. It's hard to be really good at anything. And so in order to be really good at anything, you have to be dedicated to something. And it's hard to be dedicated to something if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, or you're dedicating yourself to something that's just not something that other people are care about or are going to incentivize you to do. And so you really need to be at this cross section, like I was saying, between doing something that you at least somewhat are interested in and enjoy, and setting a goal around it, and something that people are interested in. right? And are willing to at least listen to you on, in the case of YouTube, but whether it's to watch or to pay you to do something or whatever it is. But you gotta be at that cross section. Otherwise, you have a lot of people who are spending a lot of time doing things that no one is ever going to reward them for, or that people aren't going to care about, or maybe that they don't even necessarily care about, but it's just a habit for them. And then you have a lot of people who, so they're very passionate, but they have no plan to make it realistic to do what they're doing. And then you have a lot of people, so those people may be over optimistic or don't care about the reality of the situation. And then you have people who are the opposite, and they think that like it's like impossible to go do something else. And they're not setting goals, and they're not working on improving the little details and accepting responsibility for the way that things are. It's radical accountability, right? I'll even say, when I said earlier that there's two types of people who accept responsibility and people who don't. There's, I think, a middle group that more people fall into, because really it's a spectrum of how much responsibility you accept. And the middle group is more like people who have an accurate picture of reality. So they accept responsibility for things that they're very clearly, really directly responsible for, but they don't accept responsibility for anything negative or bad that happens to them or about their situation that isn't really their fault, whether it was because they were unlucky and they could be right? They could have gotten unlucky. They could have had a bad break. They could have not had the best circumstances, or, whatever the case may be. But really, the people who have radical accountability to the point where they're accepting responsibility for things that aren't really their fault that happen to them, are able to fix those things or make up for those areas where they're unlucky or had bad circumstances in a way that elevates them and gives them the best life no matter what their circumstances were. So that tends to be really important. It's understanding that, sure, you're right. Like this, in a league play, I give a classic example of, you have a lot of teams where one person will be split pushing. Typically your top laner playing Jax, but you have your top laner split pushing, and you have the rest of your team in mid set to fight, and the 4 people in mid go in not realizing it's 4v5, and the guy split pushing top was top for no reason when his team was obviously posturing to take a game deciding fight in mid. And it's like, well, who do you blame? Well, it's like, if you're the top laner, you blame yourself, because you could have been at that game-winning fight, and had you been at that obvious game-winning fight that was about to occur, you would have won the game and not had your team throw the game. So you could have covered for your teammates not realizing that you weren't there by playing a simpler, more streamlined version of the game that was on the same page as your teammates, and you would have just won easily because you were ahead. If you're the 4 people who decided to go in without realizing that your top laner was top, you blame yourself, and you also take responsibility because you should have realized that your top laner wasn't with you, and that you were potentially taking a 4v5, or that you were taking a 4v5, and that you lost the game for no reason when you were ahead, when you should have just waited for your top laner or been on the same page. And sure, if you're a coach, you could maybe have an objective opinion. Like, maybe there's some circumstances where Jax was able to take a ton top for free, and if his team had just held off, Jax would have been able to get enough that it would have been really worth it for him to be split pushing, and so the mistake was more on his team. Or you have a different game state where there were no top turrets to take, and Jax is completely trolling for being top. I think what a lot of people do is they take the coach's perspective. They take the realistic, real world perspective of like, this was more on this person than the other people because this made sense this way because of these reasons. They're viewing the world through a rational lens, a fair lens, but a lens that's going to hold them back, because rather than asking themselves, what could I have done to get the best outcome, the outcome that I want in every scenario of my life, they're just saying, this was more this person's fault, or this was more because of this, or this was more because of bad luck or circumstances or whatever. And we're not thinking about, okay, sure, there was bad luck involved, but did you do everything that you could to protect yourself from the bad luck or from this bad thing happening? And people don't want to take that radical level of accountability. And when you take that level of accountability, even if it seems unfair, it won't feel unfair to you, because what it'll feel like is you're improving so much and you're getting better, and you're making the best out of, your limited life, that it's worth it to live that way, even if other people might say, hey, you're being unfair or hard on yourself or whatever. Like, who cares if you're being hard on yourself? Like, I'd much rather be hard on myself than not live the life that I want to live, if that makes sense. And so, well, let's see, where do we go from there? So yeah, it's just important to take those lessons away from League. That League is a great tool for learning how to improve at something. It usually starts with accepting responsibility and then figuring out, how could I have, okay, I know that I could have done something to help this be better. What is it? And maybe you don't know, but maybe you have, a couple of different ideas, or you only have an inkling of an idea or whatever. And you can do multiple things. You can seek out maybe other people who know what you're doing wrong or could help you improve at what you're trying to do, maybe have the answers for you. You could, try your different ideas and see which one seems to be working more of the time. So even if you don't necessarily know what you could have done, just by beginning to accept responsibility and accountability, you can, you can tackle those things or solve those problems that seem otherwise unsolvable or out of your control. Sometimes people say, don't worry about things that are outside of your control. And I think that that's good advice if you're overwhelmed. But I think that if you're not overwhelmed and you're able to handle what comes with worrying about things that are outside of your control, you'll realize that nothing is really outside of your control. That there's a lot of things that you could do if you were willing to make radical changes to the way that you're doing things. And so in League, for me, that looks like sometimes I will radically blow up my build, or even the way that I'm playing, and try something new. And it will, even if it doesn't work or fix the problem I was trying to solve, I'll at least learn something from trying something new. And I think that there's a lot of people in life who are very much scared to try something new, because they're, even if they complain about it, they're definitely comfortable doing what they're doing. And you don't want to be comfortable doing what you're doing, because a life where you're not improving and doing new and interesting things and bringing your game to a new level at whatever it is that you're doing is probably not a life that's that worth living. And that's been my philosophy. And I honestly, this is the way I've thought since I was like 15, because of League. And that's an amazing thing to take away from a game. Again, don't let it become... So it's an incredible game for teaching me those things. And I, for that, I appreciate the game and have a certain love and respect for the game. But don't, like I said before, don't let playing League just be a thing out of habit. Let there be a reason for it, at least. So for me, it's like, it's a competitive outlet for me. Whereas in other areas of my life, I'm not really directly competing with other people in the same way. Obviously, I've gotten very good at the game, so there's, it's like one of a few things in my life that I can also not only just be competitive at, but be competitive at a very high level, which can be sometimes fun. sometimes very frustrating. I mean, I did make a video called In Defense of Toxicity, but, so sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating, but that's part of the fun too. League or anything that you can do at a high level competitively is a roller coaster of emotions and exciting, to say the least, although sometimes depressing and sometimes more fun. Where was I going with this video? We don't really know. It got really deep, but maybe we should do more of these instead of the league content. Maybe this is better than the league content. Let's see, is there anything else? But yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for 3K subs. We'll see where I go next with League. I had been working on my champion pool for a while, and I'm pretty sick of that, frankly. I'm pretty convinced on a personal level, even more so after practicing some champions for a little while, that I'm totally capable of playing 7 to 10 different champions at least, and a lot more that I know I have in my pool of champions I've experienced over the years that I haven't even tried to pull out yet this season. And I'm pretty confident that I can play a lot of different champions. Obviously, teams aren't necessarily going to feel the same way about me, but I'm just sick of playing games in low masters. Right, all the stuff we were talking about how fun it is to play League at a high level. Well, the competitive nature of things when you're used to playing at a little bit of a higher level and now you're playing at a worse level, feels really bad and feels like a waste of time, and like I'm not getting to enjoy the time that I should be getting to enjoy with a really competitive endeavor at a high level. And so that ends up being a bit wasted. And so I'm sick of being in low masters. Low masters is a cesspool where games are win traded and coin flipped by players who have no idea what they're doing. And I find that the difference between, here's a concept I'll throw in at the end of the video. I was just talking about this the other day. It's kind of crazy to think about it, but think about high-elo, like Masters Plus, the top 7,000 players or whatever, in terms of percentages, like percentiles. So in the same way you would think about, like, I don't know, maybe Platinum is like the top 40% of players, and Diamond is like the top 5% of players, Masters like top 1% or maybe a little bit less. In the same way that you would think about that in terms of percentile, think about what happens when you go from Masters 0 LP to Masters 100 LP. I think that the difference between Masters 0 LP and Master 100 LP is the biggest skill difference in a 100 LP jump in the face ranked ladder of any rank in the game. And the reason for that is percentile based, like I was saying, which I was thinking the other day. It's so clear to me that when I am winning games and when I'm above 100 LP, the game quality feels good. And when I'm below 100 LP, the game quality feels terrible. And it's not exact, right? It depends on where your MMR is at. So like you could be less than 100 LP, but if you just won 3 or 4 games in a row, your MMR is a little bit above the 100 LP area, so you're good. If you're losing on your way down and you're a little bit below the 100, you could be a little bit above the 100 LP area, but your MMR is a little bit below and it feels bad. But generally around that 100 LP area, there is this very exact feeling of a drop-off that feels like a huge rank drop-off between, that it will change based on like you winning or losing 2 or 3 games in a row, which just happens to everybody constantly. So if you're floating around that rank, the quality shift is dramatic. And the reason I think that is because if you look at Masters right now, and I'm not sure the exact numbers, but let's say that Masters 0 LP, that there's like 7 to 10,000 players in an A in Masters Plus. So that means that you're like a top 10,000 player. When you go to Masters 100 LP, you're a top 3,000 player. So that means that you just went, in terms of the percentages, if there were 10,000 players in Masters Plus and you went to 3,000, you just passed 70% of the people in that ELO. You just passed 70% of them in 100 LP. There isn't any bracket of skill in the game where by passing or by gaining 100 LP, you pass 70% of your peers. It doesn't exist at any other bracket in the game. And so that makes playing in low masters, on top of the fact that it's the place where people are most incentivized to win trade because they have to face daily decay if they don't average one game a day. So people who don't deserve to be there, were duo boost there, bot accounts, whatever, have to win trade with each other in order to maintain their accounts at that rank. What ends up happening is, as a result of win traders and stuff like that, your win rate, if let's say it would normally be 60% at Masters 100 LP or 200 LP, when your ELO is high enough that you're not playing with people who are around 0 LP and win trading, your win rate would be 60%. There's so much win trading going on around Masters 0 LP that your win rate will drop to like 55%. And so you have to play more games in order to just flip out of, in order to slowly climb or flip out of Masters 0 LP. And then you get over that hump and you start to get into 100, 200 LP territory, and the games unironically get easier. The players are actually harder and more skilled, but the game becomes more comprehensible. People stop solo losing the game as much, and there's less win trading on all this shenanigans. It's a really weird phenomenon, but that is something that I've been noticing. So I've been working on my champion pool because I was kind of interested in playing in a open qualifier for NA. I don't think that I'll be able to, at this point in my life, even, whether I'm challenger, whether I expand my champion pool or not, whether we're talking about even a couple of years from now when I've had maybe a really long time to expand my champion pool. At this point in my life, I'm not moving my family out to LA to play League professionally. So I'm not going to the LCS. But one level that I could play at is open qualifiers, and I think potentially Academy, if Academy is online. And so I was looking at joining an open qualifier team. And in order to do that, I want to showcase that I can play some different champions. So I've been learning some different champions, experimenting with some new ones, more recent champions and things like that I should have played more of. Things like that, playing the Rakan, playing a little bit of Bard. Tried Maokai support, which was one that's kind of a weird niche, somewhat off-meta support pick that people haven't really been playing much recently. He was obviously much better when his saplings were really good on support, and then that got nerfed quite a bit. Maokai, to me, feels pretty bad in support, somewhat unplayable, but maybe it's my play style. I tried playing him tank, which is more my play style and also makes sense after the nerfs to his saplings, but maybe AP Maokai support is still better. So I've tried different stuff like that. I've had found some level of success with certain champions like Janna, Leona, Karma, Lulu. Those ones are easy. My Nautilus gets no love, but I think my Nautilus is quite good actually. But it gets no love. These players in low masters, they're impossible to play around, and it's killing my win rate on Nautilus. I don't know what to tell you. I could hit 3 hooks on the same target, and these 80 carries wouldn't kill anyone. So, I should probably play Nautilus and then just farm. But is that why you play Nautilus? No, I don't think it's why you play Nautilus. So, and is it how you improve at Nautilus? You get better at hitting hooks by sitting there in lane and never throwing your hook? I don't think so. So we're improving right now is what I like to say. So we'll see, we'll see what happens with that. The open qualifier that's in the next one is in August, which is too soon. And I won't have time to make the YouTube videos that I want to make and do everything else that I'm doing and also do that. So I'm not trying to play in the open qualifier in August. But I'm just slowly, working on my champion pool, and then I'm going to get my rank back up. And we're kind of in the stage now where I'm trying to get one more champion into my pool. I'm working on a little bit of tank Morgana support right now, which I enjoy. And, so we'll see how the last couple of games of that go. And then if that goes well, then Morgana will be the last one that I'm working on, and I will go back to my usual Braum shenanigans, and enjoy solo queue a little bit more again as I get back up to a higher rank with Braum. But right now in solo queue for me, the fact that I'm low masters has been infinitely frustrating. I think my last 3 games in a row have all been quite frustrating. That's just how it goes sometimes. I won't really rant about that for a long time, but you get the idea. We have many more topics to cover. We're going to hit 5K eventually. I hope to keep uploading daily. That's always my goal. But sometimes stuff comes up and then I'm gone for a while, so we'll see. But thank you guys for your support. I read your stuff. You can join the Discord in the description for, I'd like to see the Discord server a little bit more lively. We don't, part of that is on me. I should probably structure it a little bit better and engage with it. We need some people to help run it as well. The guy who set it up, which was great that he helped us set it up, but the guy who set it up, I think stopped doing it a while ago. So we could use some help with that. So let me know. You can always DM me on Discord through that server. If you have any questions, any video suggestions, there's channels in the server for that. And with that being said, thank you guys for 3K, and we'll keep doing it. And good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day.